Do you know what the best audiophile system on the planet is? It's the one you can afford. And I don't mean that to be sarcastic or insincere or clickbaity. My point here is that the best audiophile system is the one that gets you in touch with the music soonest. Now, I recently did a video that was looking at audiophile setups from $500 through to $2,000 US, but as I mentioned in that video, it's also possible to go way higher if money is no object. And so after spending the last video focusing on systems that were all generally affordable, sometimes obviously you'd need to do some saving, some planning, maybe build them up gradually, but this time I wanted to pull out all stops and take a look at what you can do if money is no object at all. And so let's chat about how I would spend the money if I was putting together some headphone-based audiophile systems starting at around about $5,000 US and going all the way up to $15,000 US. The first system that I looked to build at around about that $5,000 mark, and we are going to creep just a little bit over $5,000 here, but if you're going to build a system at around about that level, I'd be kicking things off with one of two DAC choices. The first option and the cheaper option for most locations is going to be the Gustard R26. I think this is a fantastic DAC. It's an R2R DAC. It's got streaming capabilities. It's just a brilliant, brilliant unit. And it comes in at what I think for the performance is a very affordable price at $1,650 US. Now, I did say I was going to give you two DACs here. The special mention goes to the Chord Cutest, and the only reason that I'm putting the Cutest as a secondary option here is that depending on where you are in the world, it's going to push our budget a little bit too far. I do think the Cutest might give you slightly better sound quality than the R26, although I've never compared them side by side. And so that's one to go for if you can get it within your budget, but the R26 has more features. It's got balanced outputs if that matters to you. It doesn't tend to matter to me, just for the record, but there are reasons to go for the R26 over the Cutest. I'll leave the rest of that decision-making process up to you. You can't go wrong with either. It's a bit dusty. I haven't used it in a while, but what we have here is the amplifier I'm going to recommend, and it's the Sparkos Labs Gemini Hybrid Tube Amp. And the reason I'm recommending the Gemini here, other than the fact that it's just a really great amp, is that for $995, you're getting an amplifier that you can tune with different tubes. You can tune how much of the tubiness you get involved, and it just sounds good. And so this was partly a budget-based decision. It was also partly, though, a pure sound quality and enjoyment decision. But just in case you want to really maximize the performance of your system and you've got the budget available, or maybe you don't want to think about tubes and rolling tubes and stuff like that. By the way, you don't need to roll tubes in the Gemini. The tube it comes with out of the box is fantastic. But if you want to stay well away from tubes and stick with solid state, the other amplifier that I'm going to highly recommend here is the Schiit Mjolnir 3. The Mjolnir 3 bumps our budget up a little bit, coming in at $1,200 US, but in my opinion, it is hands down the best solid state headphone amplifier, probably under $2,500. It's just absolutely brilliant. It should, from a performance point of view, cost way more than it does, but in typical Schiit Audio style, they've priced it based on what they can afford to sell it for, not how it performs. So I love the Schiit Mjolnir 3, I love the Sparkos Labs Gemini, both of them are going to be a great part of this system. And so we're currently sitting at around $2,650 if you've taken this guy with the R26, or $2,850 if you've gone up to the Mjolnir 3, and so that left us with around about $2,500 to play with for a headphone. The decision here was easy, I didn't have to even think about this one. The only headphone I'm going to recommend for $2,500 is the one that I think is one of the most enjoyable headphones on the planet, and that's the ZMF Headphones Atrium. Or ZMF for you Americans out there. The Atrium is not the last word in resolution, detail, analytics, neutral tonality, but where it is the last word, in my opinion at least, is just connecting you with the music. This is a magnificent sounding headphone that's beautifully built, wonderfully comfortable, and it's given me probably more of those lose yourself to time listening sessions than any other headphone I've ever owned. So much so that I reached out to Zach and Bevan at ZMF to get my very own pair of Atriums after I did the review, because this was a headphone that I could not live without. It is one of those few headphones in my collection that I will never ever want to sell, and so this was an absolute no-brainer to cap off a $5,000 headphone system, and it brings the final pricing to $5,144 US dollars if you go down the path of the Sparkos Labs Gemini. I'm not including Q-Test pricing in here because it does vary a bit depending on where you are. But if you're going with the R26, the Sparkos Labs Gemini, and the Atrium, you're coming in at $5,144 US dollars. If you want to go the solid state path and the slightly higher performance path with the Mjolnir 3, that's going to bump us up by about $200 and leave us at $5,349 US dollars. For that money, many of you will never need to think about buying another piece of gear. We all know that you will, but you probably could be happy with this for the rest of your life. But we know the truth. We've all been in this hobby for long enough that the itch will come, and so let's talk now about what to do if you've got even more money to spend. To kick this system off, we're going with a DAC that I think is still one of the best around. I am going to be recommending an older version of the DAC because I'm yet to hear the new one, but if you look up there over my left shoulder, there's the shit Yggdrasil OG. The Yggdrasil OG has now been retired, I believe, and now we've got, I think it's called the More is Better. I'm hoping to have one coming in for reviews soon from Shit Audio, but for now, I'm just going to recommend whatever version of the Yggdrasil you can get your hands on. Current versions of the Iggy come in at about $2,599 US dollars, and there's a couple of reasons that I really love the Iggy. One of them is that it's got multiple outputs. You've got 2 pairs of RCAs, 1 pair of XLRs, so you can connect it up to more than one headphone amp, preamp, power amp, whatever you want to do. Maybe not power amp because there's no volume control on the Yggdrasil, but the point is it gives you versatility by having those 2 pairs of RCAs and 1 pair of XLR. Even more important than that is the fact that it just sounds great. It's engaging, it's organic, it's musical, but it's not overly thick or smooth. It's got a more energetic and insightful sound than some of the smoother R2R DACs, but it hasn't got the analytical tonality that some Delta Sigma DACs can get into. And so that's why I love the Iggy and I'm recommending it here. If you do want to hear my thoughts on the newer version of the Iggy, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to keep following up with shit until we're able to organize something with the new version. And when we're talking Shit Audio, it just made sense to me to bring back the Mjolnir 3 once again as my headphone amp at this level. Even though I used it one level down in the $5,000 setup, the amplifier is just that good that it carries us all the way through this setup as well. This is a $2,500 amp that you're paying $1,200 for. So it comes in again, I don't need to talk about it again, it's a wonderful, powerful, solid state amplifier and it's coming into this system to stack beautifully and neatly on top of your Iggy. However, maybe you like tubes. So I've got a tube recommendation for you as well here. While you can get it, I don't know what the future holds here, but in the short term, if you've got DIY skills, which means if you can hold a soldering iron, use a soldering iron and follow instructions, then what I'm going to recommend you buy here is the Bottlehead mainline. Yes, you need to build it yourself, which for some of you is going to be an instant no-go, but for those that can build it themselves and it's not too hard to do, the mainline offers incredible bang for buck and is a wonderful tube amp. It also comes in at just $1,299, so it doesn't shift us too much away from the budget for the Mjolnir. And so we're currently sitting at $3,799 US dollars for the solid state setup, or $3,898 for the tube-based setup that you have to build yourself, at least the amplifier part of it. And so we then need a headphone that's going to work beautifully on either of these setups, and one that's going to be enjoyable, fun, engaging, insightful, because after all, we're looking for high quality audio here, and we're going to turn back to ZMF/ZMF. Now you could go with the Atrium again and keep your price down, or you could go one step up in terms of some of the technicalities of its performance and go with the ZMF Caldera. The Caldera is a planar magnetic instead of the dynamic driver used in the Atrium, but it's another wonderfully engaging and enjoyable headphone. And so with the Caldera coming in at $3,500 US dollars, our total system price for a really fantastic setup is $7,299 if you go solid state, or it's $7,398 if you go down the tube path. Now for my money, as much as I love the mainline, I would be going the solid state path here, but I wanted to give you both options. And so we're now playing in true big boy audiophile territory, and that's not a knock on the lower systems, because as I said at the beginning, the best system you can get is the one that's going to get you listening to your music right now. But for those of you that are lucky enough to go out and spend whatever you want on an audiophile system, let's talk about what that might look like. Now I probably should start here by saying that I have capped this a little bit. I haven't gone to the level of, say, $15,000, $20,000 DACs. Obviously we could have, but I chose to keep this somewhere in the realm of most people. The wide majority of audiophiles, I think, can play in this space if they want to build up to it, save up for it, just do it over time, etc. So obviously there are systems that go way beyond what I'm about to talk to you about, but I think this system is still within the realms of possibility for someone that's really committed and wants to save and build the system over time. Or for those of you that just have cash laying around, PayPal link's down in the description. And so we need to kick this off as always with the DAC, and I had two to think about, but the one that I've landed on is going to come as no surprise if you've watched the channel for a while, and it's the Chord Hugo TT2. This one comes in at $5,295 and there's a couple of reasons I'm recommending it. One of them is I think it's one of the best possible DACs for the money, but one of the other reasons I think it's a great starting point for building a system like this is it comes with a fantastic headphone amp on board. So you can start with just a TT2 and you're already a long way there. I did also consider the Holo Audio May KTE. It comes in a bit more expensive at $5,598 and it doesn't have an amplifier, but it is a lovely sounding DAC. I would choose the TT2, but the May's another option. From there, we're going to split the path once again and talk tubes and solid state. And so let's start talking about the tube amplifier that I think is the one to go for. And that's the Linear Tube Audio MZ3. This little guy is not just a headphone amp, it's also a speaker amp. And so that gives you extra value if you've got a set of relatively sensitive speakers. It's not the most powerful amplifier around, but if you've got sensitive speakers that are pushing up towards, say, 90 decibels per watt, thereabouts, this is one of the nicest headphone and speaker amp combos that I've ever tried. I'll let you watch my full review of the MZ3 to properly understand why it's so special. It uses a very specific technology for the tubes, which is known as ZOTL, and the results are just transparent and glorious audio. So do yourself a favor, check this one out if you haven't heard of it before, because this one comes in at $3,700 and could easily be an endgame amplifier for many people, particularly with a nice set of tubes in it, such as a pair of the Ray 6S and 7 reserve tubes. That's obviously going to add a little bit of price to the setup that you're doing, but I think it's a really worthwhile investment and one that you can make later on if you want to. And so if we put down the tube amplifier recommendation, let's talk now about the solid state one. When it came time to think about the best solid state amplifier that I could that doesn't go to stratospheric levels like a Zale HM1, the next best thing that I thought about was the Burson Audio Soloist Voyager. This thing is immensely powerful. There is not a headphone on the planet other than maybe some ribbons that it can't drive, and the ribbons is due to the fact that ribbons need special amplifiers. There is no headphone that needs more power than what the Voyager can deliver. It's also incredibly resolving, incredibly detailed, upgradable depending on the version that you buy, and at $4,199, it's a true endgame headphone amp. And so we've now got a tube amp that's great, we've got a solid state amp that's great, and that leaves us to think about which headphones I believe are the best option for somebody building a system at this level. And there are lots of choices once again. I think once we get to this level, there are so many different ways you can go, and I've ended up narrowing it only down to two. What I mean by that is I would have liked to get it to one, but I had a really hard time choosing. And so I'm going to throw you two different options here. One of them is a plain and magnetic headphone that's a little bit warmer, a little bit smoother to listen to, and that's the Meza Audio Elites. These are a gorgeous plain and magnetic, probably one of the best built headphones on the planet in terms of the look, the feel, and the comfort. And they come with a couple of different pads, so you can also tweak the sound a little bit to suit your tastes. With the Meza Elite combined with everything else I've just said, your tube system is going to come in at $12,995, and your solid state system is going to come in at $13,494. For those of you that want something that's maybe just a tiny bit more resolving, a tiny bit more on the analytical side, but we're talking a very subtle shift here, that's when I'd recommend to you spending a little bit more money and going for the Focal Utopia 2023 edition. The Utopias use a dynamic driver instead of the plain and magnetic in the Elites, and to me they're one of the most insightful and revealing but still enjoyable headphones that I've ever tried. I've chosen these two headphones, the Elites and the Utopias, in my personal collection after also trying things like the Abyss 1266, the Susvara, the LCD 5s from Audiophile. There's not too many headphones that I think can compete with the Elites and the Utopias in terms of the combination of enjoyment and technicality. That's just me and my taste. It's not to say that those other headphones aren't all wonderful, but these are the two that I think hit the sweet spot. And so with the Focal Utopia as our headphone, the tube setup comes to $13,994 and the solid state setup comes to $14,493. Now, of course, in our ever-changing hobby with new products coming out all the time, this may evolve in future, and I'll be sure to come back and check in with you if there's anything new that I think deserves a mention here. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, because even right now as I'm recording this, I know that I've got things like the Modhouse Tungsten review coming, I've got hopefully the shit Yggdrasil MIB, the More is Better DAC coming, I've got the Harmony DAC, which is a high quality R2R DAC, that's on the way. So make sure you subscribe, because there's a good chance I might be evolving these soon. But very, very importantly, I can't stress this enough, what I've just said to you is not going to let you down, even when new gear comes out. Some of these products, like the Yggdrasil over behind me, have already been superseded, but it doesn't mean that they don't sound wonderful and give me amazing musical experiences. And that's what this list is built on. If you build yourself any of these three systems, or indeed any of the three from my previous video, the one thing that I'm very confident about is you're going to enjoy your tunes through them. That's what they're built for, that's what they're intended for, and I hope you enjoy them if you go down the path of buying some or all of these pieces. And so good luck in your planning, your saving, your budgeting, and your buying. I hope you enjoy whatever gear you purchase, and I hope it gives you heaps and heaps of musical pleasure. For now, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to all of the channel Patreon members that helped to make this video possible. And if you'd like to join the Passion for Sound community, then you can click on the link here or down in the description, go through, check out the tiers, see what benefits the different tiers of patronage receive, and hopefully come and join me over on the private Discord server. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, I think you'll really get a kick out of this one up here. And so for now, let me leave to the music, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.